It is always fun to share family stories about hardships and life, stories told by parents, grandparents, and to see the similarities between these stories. I know for me growing up, hearing the stories about my father's hardships, he grew up in a small village and had to go to boarding school in order to be able to go to school. And then when he got his first job, he had to, which was teaching, he had to walk about 45 minutes in the snow each way to get to his place of work. And so the common theme in such stories is the emphasis on the hardships and how these hardships built character and helped people survive. And every time there was a hardship in our lives, my father would pull out these stories, and every time they grew bigger and bigger. The idea behind it was to help us see that, we could overcome a lot of difficult things. And so in a way, we see a similar dynamic working in the Bible. The Bible is full of those stories of people facing hardships and facing them with faith, and then finding God's hand, redeeming them, sustaining them, helping them find their way through. And so you see these Bible stories, and you have to be careful when reading them to not get too stuck on the details. And now the details might be important for someone, but normally these are really a means to an end. So we have to be careful not to get stuck on them and miss the big picture. Sometimes there is a tendency to read the Bible literally. And I think there's a danger in that because we miss the point of the story, the big point of the story. One of my favorite quotes about this comes from Richard Rohr in this book called Yes and. He says, to take the scripture seriously is not to take them literally. Literalism is invariably the lowest and least level of meaning. Most biblical authors understood this, which is why they felt totally free to take so many obvious liberties with what we would call facts. And so this makes us uncomfortable. That why? How does this fact not align with that fact when people were telling these stories? And we have to be careful not to get stuck on that. And so he says, serious reading of scripture will allow you to find an ever new spiritual meaning for the liberation of history, the liberation of the soul, the liberation of God in every generation. Then the text is true on many levels instead of trying to prove it is true on just the one simple factual level. Sacred texts always maximize your possibilities for life and love, which is why we call them sacred. And so I hope that you will focus on the big picture when you're reading a Bible story and you get stuck on the details. Look up and think, what is the lesson here? What story is being told? What moral is being taught through this story?